SMTV.
Three Tenets Podcast.
Three Tenets Podcast. Welcome back to the Three Tenets Podcast, the show that gives an in-depth look at Army National Guard recruiting, retention, and attrition management with soldiers in the field and instructors at the schoolhouse, as well as updates from the Strength Maintenance Training Battalion. I'm Caly Allen. This is the Three Tenets Podcast. Today, we are honored to introduce our distinguished guest, Major General Raymond F. Shields, Jr., the 54th Adjutant General of the New York National Guard. Major General Shields has led with distinction across 4 decades of service, from commanding infantry units to guiding strategic operations at the highest levels. Major General Shields brings both vision and experience to New York and supporting our nation. Welcome to the podcast, General Shields.
Thank you.
We're glad. Yeah, we're glad to have you. As the TAG of New York, you've been there since 2018, correct?
Yes, October of 2018.
So what have your primary objectives been?
So one of the things that I wanted to do when I became the Adjutant General, I was commissioned in 1983, so a long time ago. And I had been in the New York Army National Guard. Most of my time in the New York Army National Guard has been in units, primarily the 42nd Infantry Division, the 27th Infantry Brigade Combat Team. Back then it was an enhanced brigade. But one of the things I always saw growing up through the ranks was the lack of the focus on our people and our soldiers. And I was lucky to be a full-time employee of the New York Army National Guard, 29 years as a federal technician. And so when I became the commander of the New York Army National Guard in 2016, one of the things I really wanted to focus on was putting people first. And it wasn't that our organization was bad at that. It's just that it wasn't a priority. And our strength and our retention rates really suffered throughout the years. I remember many meetings talking about strength and retention and strength maintenance, but we never did anything about it. And so in 2016, we resolved that we were going to do something about it. And so my primary objective as the Adjutant General really has been to turn our organization, about 17,000 Army Guard and Air National Guardsmen, into an organization that's focused on the people specifically.
I feel like that lines up with the director's primary objectives as well, because one of his biggest things is people. He's looking to build relationships within the Guard, as well as, among other things that are in his focus areas. But I feel like that kind of lines up. So how have your objectives lined up to the new directors?
I think very well, as you just stated. Our organization, I have 3 priorities. It's safety, it is strength, and it is soldier readiness. And all 3 of those things are people focused. So safety, I just got done speaking to the graduating class, but safety is our paramount. We don't want anyone to get hurt or killed. We want to prevent sexual assault and sexual harassment and make sure that we respond to it appropriately. And we want to treat everybody with dignity and respect. That may not be part of safety, but it's my definition of safety. And since I'm the Adjutant General, I get to make the rules. And so safety is all about people. And then strength is all about people. It's about talent management. It's about having leaders that are all focused on the same things that I'm focused on. And then our last one is soldier readiness, and that's all about soldiers and about people. So I think it lines up very, very well. One of the things I've always said is we can do nothing. We can't do any training. We can't do any exercises. We can't do any civil support operation without soldiers. So we got to have the soldiers in the organization foremost. And so other than safety, our highest priority is unit strength in New York.
So New York is actually the number 1 state for recruiting and retention. And I know y'all have been in the previous years, the number 1 large state. Let me clarify, large state. Still the best, right? You don't have to give away all your little secrets and trades, but what would you give to other states that might be listening that are struggling to get to that point where you guys are?
As I mentioned in my remarks here a few minutes ago, to the 193, I think, graduates that were graduating from the recruiting course. What I told them is what I tell my other counterparts. A lot of times tags will ask me, Ray, What are you guys doing in New York? They'll send people to New York. We get folks coming to visit frequently to talk with our recruiting and retention battalion to see what we're doing and how they could adapt maybe what we're doing in some ways. And but what I will clarify, though, before I get into that, is we were the best large state in 2021, FY 2021. Then for FY 22, FY 23, and FY 24, we were the best recruiting and retention state of the 54. And right now we're in the lead for FY 25, and I think we're going to end FY 25. So we'll be on our 5th year of being a leader in strength maintenance. And one of the things that really makes me excited about it is that it's also transferred to the New York Air National Guard. And so the New York Air National Guard, the largest Air National Guard in the country, with 5,900 airmen, 5 wings in the Eastern Air Defense Sector. We are one of the few states that are green on strength for the Air National Guard. So I'm also very pleased that the efforts we have made to make our organization a people-focused organization has really transformed over to the Air National Guard also.
That's
but
awesome.
what I often tell other tags is, number one, we're very lucky. We're blessed in New York. We have New York City and Long Island. It's the largest metropolitan area, one of the largest metropolitan areas in the country. New York City is the largest city in the country. So we have a huge population base to draw from in New York City. And that has made us very successful in strength. But other than that, though, we have focused on people. We've added additional resources from AGR. We've taken AGR authorizations from units and put them in recruiting and retention so we could have more recruiters working on our number one priority other than soldier safety, which is strength maintenance. We also have done a lot to change the culture of the New York Army National Guard. But years ago, the New York Army National Guard was focused on the organization and not on the people. And my goal was to change that, to switch that paradigm and make it focused on the people. And it took some time. It took from 2016 until 2021, when we became the best large state, to really see that we were making great progress. And we have changed the culture where people said it was the good old boy system in the New York Army National Guard. We have changed that to a people-focused organization where everyone is treated equally, fairly, consistently, with dignity and respect. And that has been a huge part of that. So number one is focus on people. Number two is add resources, put your mouth where or put your actions where your mouth is, and put more resources into recruiting and retention. We were the only state for quite some time to have full-time battalion career counselors. Those are 23 service members, AGR, that do nothing but retention for the New York Army National Guard. And that has been a huge win for us there. The other thing we've done is we've put a lot of money into facilities. I say all the time, do things that soldiers see and use. And so we have spent $373 million alone in New York City, rehabbing our armories in New York City, and another $150 million throughout the rest of the state, rehabbing armories. Again, showing our soldiers that we do, in fact, they are our highest priority and that we do care about them. And then the last thing I'll mention is we have a New York Army National Guard app. It's called the Benefits Hub. And the Benefits Hub has information on there for soldiers and their families about benefits and things of that nature, but it also asks a question. And part of my goal of making sure that everyone knows that we care about them, that they are our most important asset, it has this thing, ask a question. And when they send in ask a question, and we get dozens per week, it comes directly to me on my email. It goes to our chief of staff. It goes to other general officers, but I pretty much follow up on most of those. I'll either call the individual to see what their problem is or see if we can rectify what their issue is. If it's a pay issue, we get the USP&FO involved immediately. And so that app, we get thousands of submissions in any given year. That app has really gone a long way to changing the culture of the New York Army National Guard so that they fully understand it is focused on people.
So this app, do you think it makes possibly it more personable because you're getting involved with the lower ranking individuals, the enlisted individuals? I feel like maybe that makes it a little more personable for them.
I think it probably does too. Many times I'll have people tell me they're shocked that I called them. But Sergeant Thomas is sitting right here, but he knows I call people all the time based on an app or an email. And oftentimes too, people are scared. We still haven't solved it totally. People are kind of scared to put down their name and contact information. which of course it makes it complicated to get back to them with an
Right.
answer. But when they provide actual contact information, which is most of the time, we do get back to them with a resolution. And the other part that the app has done is it has helped our culture, because our culture and our systems. When we first initiated the app, probably 60% of the issues we received were bonus payment issues.
Okay.
So we realized after a couple months, we have a significant problem with bonus payments. So we got our G1, we got the USPNFO, we got the battalion career counselors, and now the battalion career counselors, those 23 AGR folks that are focused on nothing but retention, they are responsible for bonuses and for reenlistments and documents and all that kind of stuff. So we very seldom now get complaints about bonus payments because we changed the way we managed it from the volume of complaints that we received on the app.
So you kind of talked a little bit about, as a large state, being the number one in the nation and soon to be continuing on to be the number one. But is there any like challenges that you might have faced or that your RRNCOs might have faced within that time that other states might see as well, and how you overcame those challenges as a state?
You know, I go back to a previous recruiting and retention battalion Command Sergeant Major Abate. And he was the first sergeant in our Alpha Company, which is New York City. And then he became the battalion CSM. And he had a thing, he was very clear. He didn't want to hear excuses. He didn't want to hear from the recruiters about why they couldn't do something. He wanted to hear from the recruiters how they were going to do something. And it wasn't that he wasn't interested in solving their problems, because he definitely was. He was a tremendous leader. He is a tremendous leader. He's still in our organization. It's that he didn't want to hear people complaining. And all too often, you know, over the past few years, even through COVID, you saw articles about the Army having challenges, the Air Force having challenges, not meeting recruiting. There's not enough recruitable population, not enough interest, all these various reasons, excuses that were out there as to why we weren't being successful. Well, Command Sergeant Major Abate took that and turned it on his head and made it, hey, how are we going to be successful? I don't want to hear what we can't do. I want to hear what we can do. And that, I think, was a huge takeaway that I have taken and learned from him. And that has inculcated throughout the battalion also. And so it's not an organization that is looking about why we can't do something. It's how we can do something. And during COVID, when we couldn't get into schools because schools might have been closed and things, they still got the lists of students, and the recruiters contacted them. Instead of actually meeting them in the school, they met them elsewhere. And so he found ways to overcome. And I kind of wish he was sitting here, because he would he is a great person to speak to about recruiting and retention.
I'll definitely write him down, make sure I can reach out to him and see if we can get him to either
I'll
come
link you
down
up
here
with him.
or I will come up there to see. Also, when it comes to, you mentioned you started in 2018 and then 21 through 24. Is that what we said? FY 21 through 24, y'all were number one. But when it comes to that portion of time, the 21 through 24, that's after COVID. Do you think y'all
During
getting
COVID.
involved during COVID? And do you think the state as a whole and your participation in helping during the COVID pandemic, did that help at all when it came to the next few years for FY 22, 23, 24?
So we're very blessed in New York. We get used a lot by the state for civil support operations. And so a standing since really 2001, the attack on the World Trade Centers in New York City and the Pentagon, we've had a standing SAD, State Active Duty Task Force in New York City. Right now it numbers about 1,050 soldiers and airmen that are on state active duty working with law enforcement in New York City. And that has really been underway now for 24 years since 2001. And we also, 1.8 million work days we put in during the COVID, the second largest number for any state of soldiers on duty during the COVID pandemic. And then we went right from the COVID pandemic. We did 1.3 million work days over a period of 2.5 years, helping New York City with asylum seekers that were coming into New York City. And now we just recently had our largest activation ever for the prison strike that we had in mid-February in New York, and we still have 3,000 soldiers and airmen on duty in prisons within New York State. And so New York State is a very friendly state for the National Guard. They understand our value. The Governor Hochul fully understands what we do for her. And we have, from the state of New York alone, the state budget for our agency is about $227 million, which a lot of states get very limited state funding. And that doesn't include, like Empire Shield, the force I was talking about in New York City. But having upwards of 5,000 people on state active duty at any given time helps us dramatically. It helps with retention and it helps with recruitment. And so because we're out in the public, we're being seen, and that is a major driver for us for our success. But it is a huge success for us by being full-time, essentially. On state active duty in New York, soldiers and airmen get the same benefits they would get if they were on federal active duty. They just don't get the federal retirement, but everything else is the same. So having that many people on state active duty has really helped our retention because they're getting paid very well and they don't want to leave the military.
Could you maybe, and if you can't speak on this on the podcast, I completely understand, the prison strike. I know when you were here last week, you mentioned that they have been in communication with you to help have your recruiters come help them learn how to recruit.
Yes.
Could you speak a little bit on that?
So I'll just start with on that is 2 Christmases ago, 2023, so it'll be 2 this year, Governor Hochul came over to our headquarters, our Joint Force headquarters, and she had an event there to recognize our success for FY23 on our recruiting and retention. And she had a press event there. She swore in some soldiers and airmen, and very nice event. So Governor Hochul herself is very much aware of our success on recruiting and retention for the New York National Guard. Not only the Army National Guard, but the Air National Guard also. And so when the prison strike happened, the Corrections Office, the Department of Corrections, was short about 5,000 corrections officers. And then about 2,000 more left during the prison strike. So they're down about 7,000 corrections officers that they need to operate the prisons, the correctional institutions. And so the governor's office asked us, hey, can the New York National Guard help corrections with recruiting since you're so successful at it? Now, we can't go out and be recruiting with our federal recruiters for looking for state employees to be corrections officers. But the funny thing is the person for the Department of Corrections that is responsible for the recruitment is a former Master Sergeant in the New York Army National Guard. He was a recruiter for us, Master Sergeant Hicks. He's retired. And so our recruiting team has been working with him, and we have actually put flyers out within our armories and air bases, encouraging people, if they're interested in becoming a corrections officer, that they can still serve in the New York National Guard and also serve as a corrections officer, have a career, have a retirement, have good health benefits, all that kind of stuff. So we've been working with corrections on not only recruiting from our people, but also how they can better recruit out in the general public.
If we can we circle back just a second to, you were mentioning earlier the enhancements that you've made to the state. And I think that I wrote down, the maintenance shop in Troy as one of the examples. Can you give us a little more information about changes that you've made or that the National Guard has made for New York to help those enhancements? Yeah.
So as again, one of the things that I mentioned before was things that soldiers see. And our focus and priority was to make sure that we provide facilities that are adequate. And so as a prime example, we had an armory in Jamaica, Queens, New York. It's New York City. A great big armory. Was built in 1933, I believe. Was never had anything done to it throughout the years. It might have had repairs, for broken window, replacing lights, that kind of stuff. The building was absolutely deplorable, and I mean deplorable. And so when I became the Adjutant General, we really started pushing hard through our members of Congress, through Senator Schumer and Senator Gillibrand, to get on what's called the Army's unfunded priorities list. We were successful. We got on the Army's unfunded priorities list for a federal project of $91 million. The state added $40 million to that project, and we were funded for that project. And we just reopened the armory after the construction was done, complete rehab. The place looks absolutely spectacular. $129 million we spent there on that one facility. And we have done the same thing with several other facilities in New York City. We just awarded a project for the Lexington Avenue Armory in New York City, which is the home of the Fighting 69th Infantry, built in 1904, so even older, $123 million on that. And all total in New York City, between the Bronx, between Harlem, between Staten Island, Brooklyn, we have put in about $373 million in improvements within our facilities in New York City. And they're really night and day. When you would go into an old, dingy, horrible facility, now you have a brand new, modern, clean, well-kept, air-conditioned. These facilities were not air-conditioned. They were horrible in the summertime and extremely cold in the winter. And so anyways, that all goes back to my concept of making sure that our soldiers understand that they are our highest priority and actually putting money in to do that. Now, it takes time. It's not something you can do overnight. You got to build the support through Congress. You got to build the support through the Army. As I mentioned before, the state of New York is very supportive of us, and they have always come up with the state share for these things, for these kind of projects. And then throughout the rest of the state, we spent about $150 million. We're currently designing a brand new, it's probably going to be $130 million headquarters building for the 42nd Infantry Division. And because they're in an old 1971 building, it looks like a middle school. And but anyway, so long story short, that commitment to our soldiers is carrying on, and I think that has helped with soldiers understanding that we do in fact care for their well-being.
Right, and it definitely, I think it boosts the morale of the soldiers as well, especially if they're not working in heat and freezing cold. I can't even imagine the cold up there. It's cold down here.
I tell you, it boosts my morale when I see the results come to fruition and when I see the work underway. Sergeant Thomas, my aide, he's here with me, but he knows I drag him. We go to these construction sites quite frequently, and I get pretty involved in how things are going. But it boosts my morale knowing that we're doing something that our soldiers are going to appreciate.
I love that. I kind of wanted to move on and talk a little bit about maybe some advice you have for these young soldiers that just graduated SQI4. They're heading to the streets. Some of them have already been out there as recruiting as RRNCO on ADOS. But is there something that you might be able, a piece of advice you might be able to give them to help?
Yeah, I would say, I kind of talked to them today a little bit, but I would be proud of what they're doing. What they're doing is incredibly important. Without soldiers in our organization, we can't do anything. If we can't train, we can't respond to civil support operations, we can't deploy overseas. So we got to have the soldiers. We just simply have to have them. And what they are doing is the most important tool or the most important task that we have is getting people into our organization. And so they should be proud of what they're doing. They should remember that they represent the Army, that they represent, that everything they're using is taxpayer funded. But I also tell our recruiters all the time is that, hey, we know this is a trying job. We know every month having to get 1 point something people in or 16 people for the year or whatever their mission is. We know that is a trying thing to do. They got to be out there, and some people aren't natural salesmen. I don't think I would be very good at that. And so what I tell them all the time is this is not a life sentence. If you're in recruiting and you're successful, or if you're not successful, we have other opportunities within the organization that we can move you to.
Of course.
And so don't feel like you're stuck in this. It may be an entry-level position into the AGR program, but in New York anyways, we routinely move recruiters out of recruiting and put them in a unit as a readiness NCO or a training NCO or a supply sergeant. And then we move people that want to be recruiters out of units. So we get this cross-pollination. And I think that's the best way. In the past, I know recruiters have been in that recruiting field potentially for an entire career.
Right.
And so that can be daunting for somebody to think about, God, I got to do this for the rest of my life. and or the rest of my time in the military. But in New York, anyways, we allow this cross fertilization, if you will, between units and recruiting and retention. So I would just say be very proud of what they're doing. Know that what they're doing is incredibly important, and we cannot be successful without them.
That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that with us. When it comes to New York, what is your vision for the future? What are you envisioning for the next coming years?
I would like to have more assigned strength than California. So right now, the largest Army National Guard is Texas. Then the second is Pennsylvania, and the third is California. And so as of today, we have 11,549 soldiers assigned. We're authorized 10,332. And so I would love to catch up to California. I don't think we're going to do that. We need more force structure and more spaces before we could really do that. But I think long term, we just want to continue to build on our people-focused organization. Yeah. And I hope that whoever succeeds me in the next couple of years when I retire, I hope that they'll keep this mindset. Of course, they'll do things differently, right? Every commander does something different. But I just hope they keep focused on our highest priority, which is people.
You shared some pieces of advice for our new young soldiers coming in as our NCOs. Is there anything we didn't talk about today that you would like to share, or something that maybe you were thinking about while we've been talking that just came to mind that you're like, I really want SMTB and those listening to know?
I don't know if it's for this audience, but I would say that it's cyclic to a degree. What I'm talking about is with resources and budgeting, right? When the military, when the Army is not meeting strength, then all of a sudden there's lots of resources put towards it. But when you're meeting strength, resources tend to decline. The people that manage the budgets say, well, we don't need to incentivize recruiting anymore. We don't need to pay for this many recruiters because we're meeting strength. And so here's the example I'll use. The Army National Guard nationally is authorized 300, end strength for this year is 325,000. As of today, it's over 328,000 assigned. It's got about 2,900 that are in long-term no-val. But we're over by 3,000 on strength, right? And so to the people that manage budgets at the Department of the Army and even at the National Guard Bureau to a degree, well, we're 3,000 over. Why do we need to continue to provide bonuses? Why do we need to continue to provide, enlistment incentives? Why do we need to continue to have this many recruiters, this many GSA cars, this many storefront recruiting spaces? Well, the reason that you do is because once the organization is moving, once things are moving, it is very hard. If you slow things down, if you take your foot off the gas, if you throttle back, it's very hard to get it moving again. And that's my biggest fear. I'm also the chairman of the Recruit and Retention and Training RAC, Readiness Advisory Council for General Stubbs. And so in that role, we have a committee that looks at all things recruiting and retention. And the point that I have kept making to leaders and to others is that once you take your foot off the gas, once you pull back because you're being successful, what's going to happen is that the engine's going to slow down, you're going to recruit less, and you're going to go into this cycle. And so recruiting, I've seen it for so long, I've been in for so long, recruiting is this cyclical thing. And what happens is when it's down, they add resources. When it's up, they take resources away, and then you go down again. So my biggest thing I would say is consistency. Let's continue to do what we're doing. We're being successful at what we're doing. We got to have the soldiers. We got to have them into our formations. And that would be my advice.
Well, thank you, General Shields. We appreciate having you on the podcast and coming to speak for our SQI-4 graduation.
My pleasure, yeah.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for listening to the Three Tenets Podcast. Before we go, be sure to follow us on social media and be on the lookout for our monthly Three Tenets newsletter. Then stay tuned for next month's episode where we meet up with another special guest.